Hello lovelies, and welcome to another episode of Squeaky's Cauldron. I'm your host, Sarah Evergreen. Thank you for being here. Today I am going to be talking about a topic that is unfortunately near and dear to my heart, narcissism. This is going to be a short series, so today I'll be talking about what to look out for in the beginnings of a relationship so that you don't get roped in by a narcissist, hopefully. And then part two, I'm going to be talking about magic, spells, practices, this kind of thing that you can do to help prevent a narcissist from getting in. And then part three, we're going to be talking about magic that will help you get rid of a narcissist if you happen to find yourself in a relationship with one. I want to preface this by saying that I am not a mental health professional. I am someone who has been dealing with narcissists my entire life, from family to intimate relationships to friendships, and it is something that has caused a lot of trouble in my life and in the lives of many, many others, people who've been near and dear to me. And I just want to raise a little bit more awareness. And I know that this is a hot topic that's going around right now, and I think that that's great. The more knowledge that we have about things in the world that are like narcissism, deeply insidious and extremely harmful, the more ability that we have to deal with those head on and to create really healthy boundaries for ourselves so that we don't become victims. So before we get into this, if you haven't already, please comment, subscribe, like this video if you're watching on YouTube. If you are listening to it on a podcast, please review the podcast in Apple Podcasts or at ratemypodcast.com/Squeaky's Cauldron. Links for that will be down below. Reach out if you have any questions, comments, concerns. I would love to hear from you. So, what is narcissism? First of all, we're probably all familiar with the myth of Narcissus. It's the myth of a man who was very beautiful and had a lot of people attracted to him, but he was not feeling it with them. He goes into the woods, he finds a pool, he falls in love with his image in the pool, and eventually dies because of this self-obsession. The disorder, narcissistic personality disorder, is defined as an inflated sense of self-importance. There is a great focus on the self. Now, this is not to be confused with self-love, definitely, not to be confused with confidence or even arrogance, although there's a lot of arrogance that's at play in narcissistic behavior. But I think even this focus on the self is not super illuminating when it comes to actually dealing with someone who has narcissistic traits. I heard it described to me once in a way that made a lot of sense to me, and maybe this will resonate with you too. A person who is navigating narcissism, whether or not they are diagnosable, they have this black hole inside of them where their personality should go. And instead of the personality, instead of a sense of self, there is emptiness. And in order to fill that emptiness, they keep pulling from other people. They pull validation, they pull personality traits. They just pull and pull and pull from other people, trying to fill that hole. And for a little while, these things that they pull from others will kind of paper over that hole, but eventually it just falls in. And so there's this constant need to pull, this constant need for acceptance, not even acceptance, for praise, for adulation, for dependency. And when there is that big yawning hole, this can turn into very quickly manipulation, abuse, all sorts of behaviors that we will talk about a little bit as I move forward. I think it's very common for someone who has been raised in a family where one or more of the adults in the caregiving position are narcissists or have narcissistic traits. It's very common for someone from that family to either A, develop narcissistic traits themselves, or B, be very attracted to narcissists. Because one of the core things that they do is to make you feel less than, to make you feel dependent on, to make you feel like you are not worthy in and of yourself, and that they are the arbiter of your worth. So moving out of a family that has this dynamic in it, someone will instinctually look for an intimate partner that will mirror this dynamic, because that's what we do. We look for intimate partners that mirror the dynamics of our family of origin. This is something, obviously, that we can unlearn and learn how to be in healthy relationships, but initially, that's generally what's going to happen, is that we mirror our parents or we mirror our caregivers. And so this cycle will often just continue and continue, because a person who is a victim of a narcissist will believe they're not worth anything better, and that this is actually love, what this dynamic is, which isn't true. How do we avoid getting into a situation like this? I think the biggest thing is self-love, and we'll get into that later. But what I want to focus on here in this video is some big red flags to look out for when you're starting a relationship. Because honestly, even someone that has a pretty strong sense of self can get roped in, because the beginnings of a relationship with a narcissist are so yummy. They feel so good. This is by design. This is 100% by design. A narcissist wants to pull you in, needs to pull you in. And the best way to do that is through lots and lots of honey that's just lying on top of a river of vinegar. A few things to look out for. 1, be extremely wary of love bombing at the beginning of a relationship. So what is love bombing? Someone comes into a relationship and they just are so effusively into you. Like, oh my God, you're the most beautiful person I've ever met. You're the smartest person I've ever met. You're so talented. This is amazing. I don't know why you're not taking over the world right now. You're incredible, blah, 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 blah. And for someone who has come from an abusive past, this is going to feel amazing. For most people, this is going to feel amazing. Like, we have some sense of our inner potential, but it's much more difficult to get the world outside to recognize. So then we have this person that's outside of us recognizing how amazing we are, and it's just like, yes, please give me more, and that's how they hook you. Because you then move into a space of, this person gets it. This person gets me. They see me. They see how amazing I am. And there will often come promises to help you reach that full potential. How can I make you bigger in this world? It's incredibly alluring. And I don't want anyone to feel like they are stupid for having been roped in by a narcissist, because it's so appealing and it's so insidious. Another thing to look out for, moving quickly. This can come about for a lot of different reasons, but it's something to be aware of. When you first get into a relationship with a narcissist, whether that is an intimate partnership or a business relationship or a friendship, if they are moving super fast, pushing you to, in the reference of an intimate relationship, to move in together, to share all your personal details, to like spend all of your time together. Back up and take a good strong look at the relationship, because this need to move quickly is very much aligned with what a narcissist needs from you, which is that they need you to need them. The faster that they can get their tendrils into your life and make them seemingly indispensable, the better. A relationship is meant to develop over time. And when it moves very fast, the people within it don't get a chance to actually know each other. There is an enmeshment, but it lacks a sense of depth. The next red flag, they need you in some way. And they start saying this, I need you. Sometimes this will come about in terms of personal violence, like I need you, or I'm going to kill myself, or I'm going to hurt myself, I'm going to cut myself. I need you, or I can't focus at work. I need you to be here in my life, or I can't do X, Y, or Z. This is, again, a way of enmeshing themselves into your life, making you feel responsible for them, making you feel responsible for their emotions. So in this context, I need you, or I can't do my life, then puts you in a position of you can't leave, you can't criticize, you have to behave in a particular way so that their mental health stability, their work, their XYZ is taken care of. Otherwise, your behavior is responsible for their actions. And I just want to make it very clear, your behavior is not responsible for someone else's actions. Also, other people's behavior is not responsible for your actions. So keep that in mind. Okay, moving forward, elevating, moving deeper into the relationship, we have gaslighting. And you've probably heard this term before. It is when an individual manipulates someone else's reality in order to make them feel crazy. This is a big one. This is a big one. And this happens not just with narcissists, but also with just manipulation within relationships. And I am of the mind that not all people who are narcissistic are gaslighting intentionally. I think that this can arise from an unconscious place, from a place of instinctual manipulation. I don't have anything to base that on other than my personal experiences, so take that with a grain of salt, but I do think that that is a possible thing, that they are so convinced of their reality, of their concept of what is real, that when something bumps up against that, even if that is fact that they're bumping up against, they will immediately rewrite the story and then feed that to you. Probably a survival instinct, because again, they very likely came from a family that this was the behavior that was patterned as acceptable, as laudable, as the only real way to exist in the world. And in order to survive that, they developed the same kind of traits. So how can you tell when someone is gaslighting you? It can be very difficult, especially if you're further into a relationship and the narcissist has gotten to a point where they're inside your head and have demolished some of your self-esteem, your sense of self, your sense of rightness, which is extremely common. to the point where I'd say like that's part and parcel of a relationship with a narcissist, is that they will dismantle a sense of self in order to have control over that person. So when you get to a place where you feel like you can't trust yourself, either because that's the way you were raised and you were told over and over again that you can't trust yourself, like me, or if that's just something that's happened within the context of this particular relationship, either way, if you're in a place where you feel like you're not able to trust your experience, your thoughts, your feelings, your intuition, then having someone rewrite reality for you will just further and further undermine that sense of trust of self. So it can be very difficult to really pinpoint when you're being gaslighted, because they make you feel crazy, because this situation happened, this thing actually happened, and you know, because you were there. And then you bring it up to them, and suddenly nothing makes sense anymore, because they say, no, it didn't happen this way at all. I said this and this. You're making things up. This is not the truth. And it's very hard to navigate that, especially because narcissists have that sense of arrogance and that sense of, oh, this is absolutely 100% true, and are putting off that energy. And then the conversation, if you keep pushing it, will often turn into some kind of violence. Whether that is emotional or physical, depends on the situation that you're in. It will get turned around, and then you become the bad guy. And you're the one that's overreacting. And you're the one, again, that's being crazy. And you're the one that should be responsible for all of this, for their emotions, for your emotions, for losing your mind. That's gaslighting. One effective tactic, which is probably not going to feel very good when putting it into play, is recording conversations. It might feel like spying. It might feel like you don't trust them, but you don't trust them. That's the thing, is that they're not trustworthy, and you need to rebuild that sense of trust in yourself. So recording a conversation, and at the very least playing it back for yourself, so that you can start to rebuild that trust in, I know what I saw, I know what I heard, I know what this experience was, and then having them put a different reality on the plate, like you can very clearly parse that out at that point. It's tough. It's really tough. For one thing, narcissists really only behave in this particular way around a particular person for the most part. And when they're around other people, they are often very charming. It can be hard to reconcile their public persona with their personal persona that you've been experiencing. It's tough. It's tough. I know. Another red flag to look for, another warning sign, is when they start cutting you off from other people. When they try to insulate you from family, friends, coworkers, and this can come about in a number of ways. They might villainize another person and say, oh, this person's trying to get in between us. You can't trust them. I don't want you spending time with them. This will very, very, very often be the case, that this is the story that comes out. Because if another person can see even a little bit about what's going on, like that's a deep, deep threat to a narcissist, and they will immediately want to have you distanced from them as much as possible. Also, distancing you from others cuts you off from your support network, so that when you are feeling out of control or crazy and go to someone for support, well, now there's no one to go to because you've been so thoroughly insulated. And in the times when you are able to get out and go to someone, they're going to very likely accuse you of being disloyal, of threatening the relationship, of turning them into a villain by lying about them, when you know that's not the case. You're just repeating a situation that you experienced. They work very hard to make themselves the absolute 100% center of your world. And anyone that does that does not have your best interest in mind. Another way that they'll do this, and this often comes earlier on in the relationship, but it is kind of a perpetual thing, is that they will build themselves up in whatever way they can through outright bald-faced lies about how important they are, how creative they are, how generous they are, how funny they are, how much people like them. But the thing is, and here's the next red flag, they don't really have any close connections. They don't have any close friends. They might have friends, but not someone that they are actually open and vulnerable with. They don't have any close family. There are relationships, but no one who you could look to and say, ah, yes, that person really knows this person. They really, there's a give and take here. That just will not exist, or will exist in fractions. So they have built up this story about how they are so amazing. But the kicker is that the world around them just doesn't see it. The world around them is trying to keep them down. And there's a big sense of victim mentality here, which you will see reflected in all of their areas of life, whether that's, when they're talking about you to someone outside of the relationship, you're going to be the bad guy. When they're talking about a job that didn't work out for who knows what reason, really, but it will always be, oh, the manager was a bitch. Oh, these people weren't good enough. When it's a friend, the friend is always the betrayer. And so they create this entire fantasy about how they're essentially perfect and the world is out to get them. But remember, going back to this image of the black hole inside, what's really happening is that they're trying so desperately to paper over that black hole instead of looking at it and coming face to face with the void and seeing what the void has to offer. Because I believe inside that void, there is substance, but there's so much trauma that is painful to look at between the substance and the black hole, that many people with this behavior, with these tendencies, are just never going to be willing to look at it. Which is sad. And it's also not your fucking problem. It's really not. A narcissist who is not willing to look at that place and not willing to do the work is just someone who's going to keep hurting other people. And it's your responsibility to take care of your life, not theirs, no matter what they tell you. Another red flag is that they cannot take criticism or advice at all. If you try, you will be turned into the villain. If you try, they will deliberately go against your very good advice and sabotage their lives. They would rather completely destroy what they have than to take advice from someone else or to take criticism to heart, which is why they so very rarely get into therapy. So if you're with someone who is unable to take a joke about their foibles, be very aware of that. It's important to be able to laugh about ourselves. And if someone can laugh about everyone else but not themselves, that's an issue. Another red flag, especially at the beginning of a relationship, is that they're gathering lots and lots of personal information about you. Now, this goes hand in hand with the moving quickly. Past relationships, things that you feel insecure about, traumas that you've experienced. This is all ammunition that they are storing up that they will be able to use against you later. That's really difficult to come to terms with, I think. It is for me, even talking about this, even after the experiences that I've had, it's really hard to imagine that this person in front of me who seems so interested in me and curious about me and empathetic towards me is actually just stocking up a weapons cabinet so that when something goes off the rails, in their opinion, they will have something to throw back at me to hurt me. And it sucks. It really sucks. And that's the way it is. So when you first meet someone, be aware of how much information you're giving them about yourself. Until someone has earned that trust, don't trust them. It has to be a gradual give and take and give and take and give and take to build a foundation. But if you just give everything at the beginning, this indicates someone who is not interested in building an actual foundation, but rather someone who's very likely looking to exploit that information. This information may be very difficult to hear and very difficult to take to heart because the beginning feels so good, and because the beginning starts off at such a high, and periodically throughout the relationship with a narcissist there will be other highs. There will be extremely low lows, and there will be very big highs. I heard someone once relate to me their concept of parenting, that they give their children very high highs and very low lows. And this breeds a sense of insecurity. Just by definition, there's no solid ground for anyone to stand on in a relationship like this. But it does fuel this need to keep pouring into the relationship in order to try to get those highs. Because those highs are fucking awesome, but they're not consistent. And you end up flaying yourself in order to try to get crumbs. And you're better than that. You deserve way more than crumbs. You deserve to have someone who can sit in front of you and look you in the eye and tell you the truth, and vice versa, and to hold that and witness that and not use it against you. That's what we all deserve. Okay, join me next week. We'll talk about some magical tools that we can use to prevent any narcissist or person with narcissistic traits getting past our castle walls and into the keep. Again, if you're watching on YouTube, please like, comment, and subscribe. If you're listening to this on a podcast, please subscribe and rate this podcast on Apple or at ratemypodcast.com/Squeaky's Cauldron. Check out the other videos here on YouTube and check out my other podcasts. They're pretty awesome, if I do say so myself. And if you are interested in booking a tarot reading with me, I am an intuitive tarot reader. You can look at my website, www.squeakyscauldron.com. use the promo code SqueakyRocks for 25% off any tarot reading or custom artwork. And find me on Instagram. I'm at squeakies_cauldron. Okay, my lovelies, thank you so much for being here. I will see and talk to you next week. And as always, until then, use your voice.